The first texture that we will create will be based on a digital image that we've prepared and stored away. And the steps that we will follow are these. First, we'll use the resource manager to create a new texture. Then we will import a graphic image, the one that we prepared, and use it as the basis for this texture. Then we will adjust the size of the texture. We will adjust the size of the preview so we can see it better. And then finally, we'll apply the texture to a 3D object as a small test. Here we are in the exercise file, exercise 10, and the resource manager is top, front, and center. Up here in this central drop-down box, we will click on it and go down to Renderworks textures. That'll be the category of the resource that we create. And then we can either right-click in the central panel here or click on the new Renderworks texture button. We can do that. And the Edit Texture dialog box opens up. And this is the dialog box that we will use to have our access into creating the new texture. First thing to do is give it a new name. So in this case, we'll call it Leaves. And now we go down into the shaders area of the Edit Texture dialog. As you remember from an earlier chapter, we have 4 types of shaders: color, reflectivity, transparency, and bump. In this particular one, we're only going to use color. And we go into the very first item, the drop-down box here, and select Image, because we will be importing an image file. As soon as we do that, the Choose Image dialog box opens, and we select the Import an Image file, which we will do. And now the Import Image Document dialog box opens and asks us to navigate to where we have stored that graphic image. In our case, it goes right to the folder containing the support resources for this exercise. And here is the image that we will import, Texture Image 1 JPEG. Click once to select it and click Open. And the next thing we see is the new Edit Image Color dialog box. Here's a preview of the image that we will be using. Important thing to notice here is the tile image controls here. We have horizontal and vertical selected. And the reason for that is that we want this image to repeat or tile multiple times across the surface of the object that we will be applying the texture to. If we were to deselect one or both of these, then the image will either repeat only horizontally or only vertically, or not at all and just have one instance of the image, which is this square image we see here. So to make sure it covers the entire object, make sure that horizontal and vertical are both checked. Now we click OK. We're back in the Edit Texture dialog. Here you see a preview of the image tiled onto a hypothetical object. Now we need to make sure that the image is the right size for what we'd like. So we go down here to the lower left side. You see the default is 1 inch in the case of imperial measurements. We leave that part alone. We'll go and click on the Set by Image. Click on that, and this window opens up. The Set Image Size. Here's where we determine how big the image is going to be in actual dimensions. You notice on the upper left side, you can just barely see here, there are these 2 small circles, which actually are control points or control handles. And if we move the cursor over the right hand one, it changes into a different type of cursor. So let's move it onto there, click and hold, and then drag it over to the opposite end of the image. So this is our reference length now for the size of this image. That's a reference length. And now we will tell it what dimension we want this reference length to be. So in this case, it will be 24 inches. Okay, this means that the distance from this control handle to this control handle is intended to be 24 inches. And click OK. Notice in the preview it went white, and the reason for that is, now this is just the preview, it's not the actual size of the image we will apply, it's just a preview image, but our object size is only 2 inches, so that's too small. So let's do something a little bit bigger. And can see. By the way, the preview image here, the viewpoint for it is controlled through the object type drop-down box here. Right now we have it set to plane, but we can make it flat. And we can make it cube, and so on. A few different options for easier visibility. So that's all we need to do to create this particular texture. We'll click OK. And now notice that the texture shows up in your resource manager. So let's make a little test. We will apply it to this object and see what it looks like. The first thing we'll do is render in OpenGL. Now, I want to point out that you need to have the OpenGL settings display textures. Otherwise, we can apply it to it, render it in OpenGL, and you won't see the texture. So let's go to View, Rendering, OpenGL Options. And you can see the options that we've selected here are Use Textures, Detail High. You don't have to have the Detail High for this purpose. Use Colors and Anti-Aliasing, and so on. These are a good set of settings for the trial run. And then you click OK. The rendering stays like that. And now we will go to the Resource Manager, select the texture we just created, click and hold, and drag it over to the object we want to apply the texture to until it highlights, and then we release. And now you can see that the texture has been applied.